The Madman!
So, got a lot of cool cards this time, including one of the most interesting cards I think I've ever seen printed. But let's start with this uninteresting card. It's Paladin's version of Ancestral Spirit, and boy is it worse, because instead of Death Rattle return this to life, it's returning this to life with 1 health. It's like Redemption, except you can target it. But Redemption costs 1 fewer, and you usually want to put it on a Divine Shield thing. You could usually finagle getting your Tyrion with Taunt to be Redemptioned. Just seems like it costs a bit too much for something Redemption already does, and Redemption wasn't really run. You'd have to be truly desperate to run this card. Maybe if there was some Death Rattle in the set that you really wanted to die. This makes it easier to kill it again and get the Death Rattle bonus again. Shadow Ascendant. So right off the bat, if you have another minion, it's worth 3/3 for 2. Is this the Priest 2-drop that everyone's looking for? Not really, because it's a 2-mana 2/2. The thing that's bad about this card is that Young Priestess never saw play, so that kind of sets precedent that this kind of effect on a weak minion isn't that good. It's definitely an aggressively statted card. It's in theory good, it's just tough to find the deck that this can fit in. It's easy to just dismiss this card as not really a priest thing, but I mean, it could become a priest thing, since the card is actually a decently powered card. The most realistic deck that I can think of, which runs the Shadow Ascendant, would be something with more 1-drops, so you'd want to play your Northshire Clerics, you'd probably even want to play Crystalline Oracle, and then Shadow Ascendant could be that 2-drop follow-up, potentially snowballing into Cabal Talon Priest. Roll them bones! Rogue card, 2 mana, draw a card. If it has Death Rattle, draw again. Fortunately, someone has done the statistics on how good this card is. Turns out you have to have about half of your deck, which is 15 cards, in order for this card to average a 2-draw. That's pretty good. 2 mana, draw 2 cards. That is pretty good. But we have the same kind of theory with Wrathion. I actually tried out the Wrathion deck. There were something like 13 dragons in it, and we still cut Wrathion. I'm not going to dismiss it that early, because I think if you actually have 15 Death Rattles in your deck, then that's completely reasonable to run Roll Them Bones. And if you have even more, this card is in theory, if you have a 28 card Death Rattle deck, well, that might be a bad idea. Okay, that's a bit too much, since sometimes you want to stop drawing. So we'll just have to see if a Death Rattle build for Rogue comes around. This card is going to require seeing the other Death Rattle cards in the set, but that could be an exciting new archetype. I will say this though, without 15 Death Rattles in your deck, I think this card is probably bad. Lilian Voss! Welcome to probably the most underrated card in the set. So it's already a 4-mana 4/5. People disrespect the Yeti stats. I mean, Yeti is borderline playable. Sometimes you have Counterfeit Coin, Razor Petal, and it turns out that replacing those with an actual spell, that's a really good effect. If this existed during the same time frame as Zeril, and you can play that in Wild, you could replace the Toxins with actual spells. If it existed during the same time period as Spare Parts, she'd be ridiculous, possibly, since your Spare Parts would become actual spells. Apparently, I've just learned that Zeril is still in Standard. Wow, that's pretty good. And it also has that Death Rattle thing going for it. Lilian, Voss, Zeril, BFFs? Probably. And why don't you roll them bones on Zeril while you're at it? Now, it's probably worth mentioning that sometimes the Battle Cry is a drawback, since Rogue tends to have some pretty good spells. But presumably, you just cast the good spells first, and then you play Lilian Voss. You probably wouldn't want to replace Backstab on turn 4, but you can like easily Backstab and then Lilian Voss. Turn 10? Yeah, get rid of that Backstab. Get yourself a Mind Control. Get yourself, get yourself Ultimate Infestation. Valeera the Hollow, the very complicated Death Knight from Rogue. I think this expansion definitely has shown that Blizzard is starting to embrace more complexity in Hearthstone, which is great. One of the seemingly tamest Battlecry abilities at the highest mana cost. You're only gaining 5 armor and you're gaining stealth for the turn. That usually keeps you alive for the turn, but you can still, like, suppose you're at 1, you know, get Hellfired and then Fellfired. Now, of course, this isn't a terribly exciting effect, so the hero power change better be ridiculously good. So here's the first playable passive hero power ever granted to players. During your turn, add a Shadow Reflection to your hand. So because this shadow reflection is pretty hard to understand, we're going to show a really easy way to follow how this shadow reflection copies things. Suppose it's turn 10. You play Valeera the Hollow. You spent 9 mana, you have 1 mana left. You spend your preparation, and then shadow reflection becomes preparation. Sinister Strike in your hand is 0 mana, you cast it. Your shadow reflection becomes Sinister Strike, does not copy the mana reduction, it's still 1 mana, and then bam, Sinister Strike. Rexar thinks that's a smart play. You're gonna see a lot of people making mistakes with Valeera, and it's a pretty complicated card. So ultimately, where does this very complex card lead us? Well, it's clearly meant for a really late game control deck, because the idea of this battle cry is you want to survive a turn, and you gain like a lot of value through the shadow reflections over time. The main problem is, can you actually recover with Valeera the Hollow? Some have suggested, okay, well the next turn you just vanish, bring back all their cards, and then you can start gaining the value off of the shadow reflections. It seems to compare poorly with Build a Beast from Hunter, since you could just press the hero power for 2 mana and then you get a card. In this case, because again, since the shadow reflection card does not carry over, you cannot realistically play very many things over 5. Really the best you can do is you play a 5 mana card, shadow reflection turns into the 5 mana card, and then you play another 5 mana card. Due to these restrictions, Valeera the Hollow is very, very difficult to pull off, and if you want to do that, why not just play Warlock, right? For 2 mana you draw another card, which is basically what Valeera is doing, gaining you an extra card each turn. This card will be used for combos you are thinking like an arena player. Why don't you actually name the combo instead of just saying that? Miracle will use Malagos into Coin Sinister Sinister. Wait, why wouldn't you just Malagos Coin Sinister Sinister? So yeah, you can do it twice instead of once. Woo! My mind is not big enough to comprehend the fat, sick combos you can do with Valeera. The best you can do is make a card that normally can only be played twice, be played 3 times. So I guess this supposed combo is you can have 3 Cold Bloods, that seems to be best. So South Sea, Cold Blood, Cold Blood, Cold Blood, Faceless. Woo. Is that going to be a practical combo? Find out with the expansion. Cute Murloc card here for Shaman. Ice Fishing, draw 2 Murlocs. Fits naturally into Quest Shaman, but we don't have to think that specifically. Just the basis of it being 2 mana, draw 2 might be enough to justify building a Murloc deck, or some part of a Murloc deck, without actually using Quest Murloc. You don't have to go that heavy. There used to be a bunch of water decks out there which ran Finja package, so Finja, 2 Murloc War Leaders, and 2 Bluegill Warriors. With Ice Fishing, you can draw 2 of those, and those aren't bad cards, especially when you draw them in conjunction with each other. Fish out the Finja, Finja fishes out other Murlocs, seems potentially good. And also potentially good with, of course, Quest. And maybe Quest Shaman manages to survive a bit with Brrloc, and perhaps a good card to fish out with Ice Fishing. Compares not that well with Glacial Shard, since just for 1 more mana you're getting 1 more health and that's it. But it has that Murloc tag. So perhaps I think that Brrloc is less likely than Ice Fishing, but Ice Fishing seems good. Oh, this Hearthpone rating on it is ridiculous. Over 90% of the people called it playable plus. This is clearly dusted, I think. How can this possibly be good? It's Glacial Shard with 1 extra mana for 1 extra health. Ridiculous. Whoa, it's a Murloc! Woo! Wow! That completely justifies the 1 extra mana for 1 extra health. Guys, there's no way this card's ever good. Treachery is a really cool card. There are a few things that this will work with, including but not limited to Bomb Squad, or Major Domo Executus, or Bittertide Hydra. But all of this seems really impractical. The most practical combo is you play Doomsayer and then you Treachery it, and that's a 5 mana board clear. That's been done in the past before. Wild Pyromancer Equality is a 4 mana clear with 2 cards. Treachery, though, has absolutely no utility other than giving your opponent the Doomsayer. So will this actually be good? It seems like it would mainly be for the Treachery Doomsayer. It seems like Corrupting Mist might be good enough, if you were to want to clear the board cheaply. Unwilling Sacrifice. I'm unwilling to say anything good about this card. I mean, if Deadly Shot were neutral, of course a lot of decks would run it. So, okay, fine. We're willing to take a little bit of a sacrifice. But this is a really big sacrifice for costing the same mana. You trade one of your minions to destroy a random one, when you can just run Blast Crystal Potion instead, which costs one more and targets a minion and destroys it. Seems like a good contender for the worst card in the set. In order for Unwilling Sacrifice to be good, no, there's just no way. And finally, we have Skulking Geist. Much anticipated counter to Jade Druid. And this is also the biggest disruptive effect that Blizzard has ever printed. I like how they managed to specifically target Jade Druid with it, while, you know, not being like so blatant to like reset the Jade counter or like destroy Jade Idol or something, but it destroys 1-cost spells. Worth mentioning is that Skulking Geist only kills all cards with base cost 1 mana. So if you Primordial Glyph up a 3 mana Volcanic Potion and it becomes 1 mana, it will not get killed by the Geist. That not only hurts Jade, but also a few other things, but not really hurting other things that much to the extent that it's worth mentioning. I'll kind of dispel a few rumors. It doesn't kill Evolve Doppelgangster combo, because that deck just wants to throw out a bunch of cards, and Evolve is kind of optional. If you're playing your 6 mana 4/6, you're probably getting run over by the Bloodlusted tokens that are out there. It's really bad against Token Druid, because while you can get rid of Mark of the Lotus, you just played a 6 mana 4/6, and then the opponent just killed you. So realistically, this card only has one target, and it's Jade Druid, and it's for that reason that I don't think that this card will see any play. Now, we say this a little bit cautiously because Eater of Secrets is seeing play, but Eater of Secrets has 2 main targets. It's got Mage, and it's got Paladin. Eater of Secrets has some pretty awful stats at 4 mana, so I can understand Skulking Geist. Yeah, that's actually slightly better stats than Eater of Secrets. Okay, fine. Silence Priest, it eats the Inner Fire. It's pretty hard for Silence Priest to win. So it has 2 targets, I'll give you that. But the thing is, specifically attacking against Silence Priest and Jade Druid seems much less good than attacking against all mages and all paladins. So it's just a bit too specific. Now, despite all that though, given the right amount of Jade Druid out there, and given how bad the control matchup is against Jade Druid, I can see control decks teching in one of these. Specifically, control decks will tech in one of these if their matchup on the whole against everyone is roughly good, but just has a terrible matchup against Jade Druid. Sure, you can hurt your matchup against the field by a little bit by removing 1 card for the Skulking Geist, and then making your matchup against Jade so much better. Because once you play the Skulking Geist, it's actually winnable as opposed to unwinnable, and it's actually favored. But the important thing to realize is you don't always win against Jade Druid by playing Skulking Geist also. I think this is a really elegant answer to Jade Druid. It does not spell the end of Jade Druid like some people think it is, and it's not a ridiculous counter like some people think it is. This card won't see play if Jade Druid doesn't see play, and if a lot of Jade Druid sees play, I think this card will see play in control decks. So I think Blizzard hit the perfect spot for it of hitting Jade Druid while not being obvious that it hits Jade Druid, and it also has applications other than hitting Jade Druid. So a really cool card. And I like how this set has a lot of spice to it. If we all sub, he'll never finish. It's true. I'll never get started if you all sub. What a troll you would be if you used Amazon Prime to sub right now for free. You would totally be completely inconveniencing me. Thanks for sub. It worked. Whoa. Navitas? You certainly are getting me good right now by subbing. I totally can't start the review, thanks to you, Skullin. You guys are such pranksters. You guys sure got me good there.